With the inclusion of access to Copilot into Bing and the much derided AI overview feature in Google, we've seen search engines start to become AI chat interfaces. But now, with the preview release of SearchGPT, we can get a look at OpenAI's foray into turning its expertise in AI chat to the search engine. In this video, I'm going to look at SearchGPT's capabilities, what happens when you get access to it, do some demos, and consider where it sits within the whole AI roadmap we are currently all on. But first, a quick introduction. My name is Nick DeCourcy. I'm the owner of Bright Ideas Agency, a digital transformation consulting company focused on the needs of smaller businesses. I'm also the author of Who's in the Copilot Seat, a guidebook for small and medium-sized business leaders on how to adopt AI technology. Check out the links below if you're interested in learning more. So SearchGPT was announced back in July, and then, and up to the time of this recording at least, the manner in which to access it is to join a waitlist for early access. It's important to point out that OpenAI didn't really roll this out as a new product. They are pretty explicit in saying that this is a prototype with the intention of taking what works and reintegrating it into ChatGPT. So in the long term, while ChatGPT may become more of a search engine, it doesn't seem as if OpenAI is intending on having a discrete search engine product. Though OpenAI allegedly doesn't always do what it says. Just ask Scarlett Johansson. So only time will tell whether this truly is exactly what OpenAI claims it to be. So you sign up to the waitlist and sometime later you'll get an email inviting you to start using SearchGPT. Upon first logging in, you're presented with some additional service terms. Some of these are somewhat interesting, such as the section about information sharing with third parties. If we think about the ChatGPT model, you have the existing web results provider Bing, and then other external access via GPTs is all opt-in with clear transparency. Here it seems that third-party access to data may be less transparent and presumably based upon their content licensing agreements with index that are beyond Bing's. The work in progress section is also interesting in that it calls out the fact that mistakes can be made, but within the context of it being a work in progress. The implication here is that at some point in the future, while this is no longer a work in progress, it won't make mistakes, which is not the experience we see with other generally released AI products like Copilot for Microsoft 365, where disclaimers for AI errors are still an important CYA element for the publisher. Once you accept the terms, you get yet another welcome screen, again explaining how this relates to a new way of working and how sources are involved, and then you're in a search engine that looks very much like ChatGPT. As always, any demos you're seeing in this video are set up just for demo purposes, so you're never seeing anyone's private data. Let's start off with something that's relevant for probably most people who watch my channel. How will it deal with a query like, what are the features of Copilot for Microsoft 365? While the presentation of this response is very ChatGPT-esque, there are some important differences. First, each section of the response has a specific citation, and at the bottom of the response are resources to look at. By pulling on sources like Microsoft Learn, we know we are seeing what would be regarded as authoritative sources for this type of query. And if I go over to the sources flyout, I can see all the sources that were used in this response. I also get a basic image search capability as I do in Google or Bing. But here it's not so clear where each of these images is derived from. There is also no video search as there is in Google or Bing. By comparison, if you run exactly the same query in ChatGPT, you get a very similar type of response, but entirely devoid of those citations that are so important to the response in SearchGPT. This makes doing research independent of the LLM response, which is critical for accuracy, a lot harder. But any good ChatGPT user knows that this isn't the end of the issue. It's fairly easy to force ChatGPT to use its web browsing mode and provide references simply by asking it to provide citations. And while each time it gives a different response, it gives the same nature of response, just with citations. However, it's important to note that in this regard of having to cajole ChatGPT to tell you where the heck it's getting its information from, a fairly sensible question for any time you're relying on someone or something to report on anything, really. It's truly in the minority. By default, if we run this sort of query on Bing or Gemini, we get sourcing information. Now, I'm not comparing the quality of the responses here, but simply highlighting that with SearchGPT, OpenAI seems to be turning on a default that other big players in this space have understood is important for quality control already. So the question is SearchGPT really a search engine that OpenAI has started to play with, or just a slightly different iteration of ChatGPT with some sensible bells and whistles that its competitors have already established in their products? One of the things I still will regularly use Google for is when I know where I want a response from. By including site:\domain name in my query, I'm able to have the search engine bound its responses from that source. There are a number of search query add-ons like this that we can use to refine the types of results we get from a service like Google, and these, in my view, are an important part of the capabilities of a search engine. For a search like finding the features of Copilot, bounding my results to Microsoft.com makes a lot of sense, and you can see here that Google honours such a request. All the responses we see here are from Microsoft Web Properties and therefore could be considered as authoritative information for this particular topic, unlike a random website where you're unsure whether the information is correct. However, SearchGPT doesn't currently have this capability, which has been part of the toolset of most search engines for as long as I can remember at this point, which I don't think is a bad thing. It's just it deviates from what you might think this product should be doing, looking at what it's called. There are definitely other useful features here, like being able to chat with the response you get, but again, this idea of getting a response with web citations by default, and then being able to chat with AI in a conversation about that content, is simply the default for both Copilot and Gemini. ChatGPT is the odd one out by often ignoring the importance of telling you where it's getting its information from. The other basic issue that OpenAI probably feels is in comparison to both Microsoft's and Google's services, there's the business play of integration with your productivity data. OpenAI doesn't have that, and so there's a big part of how people are using these types of services daily where ChatGPT simply doesn't compete equally, even if the quality of what it produces given the right data is often better. I wonder if by focusing on this product, OpenAI is missing the opportunity to push forward with better solutions for not just accessing enterprise data, but indexing enterprise data that can enhance results just like we see from the web results here. If you're finding this video useful, it would be great if you'd give it a like, and if you want to see more like this, please do subscribe to the channel. One of the big differences between what we see in SearchGPT and responses on Bing or Google is there are no ads, and this is consistent with how ChatGPT has been operating up until now. However, many years ago, when Google was little more than a garage-based startup, it didn't have ads either. So the idea that a new service hasn't yet charged full speed into monetizing every cent it can shouldn't mean that it won't in the future. However, with ChatGPT Plus and other paid offerings OpenAI has, I wonder if an ad-free search engine, either integrated into ChatGPT or perhaps as a separate product if OpenAI changes its plan, could become a sweetener to their subscription as a retort to Google's recent finding of being a monopoly in search. Ultimately, if the company accused of stealing all the world's copyrighted materials was our saviour from the conduct of the company, maybe along with Meta, thought of as being one of the worst offenders in stealing our data, that would be pretty ironic. I think the need to prototype this is a response just to ChatGPT being a little behind both Copilot and Gemini when it comes to using web search results for citations in its chatbot outputs, and the necessity to do this as a test in an entirely separate product when Microsoft and Google appear to be able to just do the same in line already is somewhat perplexing. I think it demonstrates a belief by OpenAI that it can eventually ship AI that just gets stuff right, but what its competitors have seemed to work out is that right without accessible evidence might as well be wrong. My opinion here is that OpenAI is trying to fix the wrong problem. What ChatGPT can do is in most cases objectively more useful than what a search engine does, but only when it gets it right. Just tacking on a search engine product somewhere in the interface doesn't fix the basic problem that understanding where facts came from and then managing citations to ensure they have been fairly represented by the AI model is the hard part of using all these services. It doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. Those existing makers of search engines have already set a direction on this. Of course, in some ways, this is all a fairly fundamental LLM issue. The model itself doesn't necessarily know why it knows the things it does, and unless the patterns it saw when it learned those things are truly representative of reality, what it knows may indeed not be correct. When doing a web search, we don't know how closely the LLM is bounded to the grounding of those search results, and thus are we truly getting the benefit or just more potential confusion? Though on the other hand, the Google ranking algorithm is potentially as much of a black box as GPT-4, so neither experience is necessarily a true representation of untainted reality. But that's as far as I should burrow into the rabbit hole of everything that's wrong with how AI models work for this video. What are your thoughts on SearchGPT? Have you been using it yet? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching through to the end. Until the next video, bye bye.